Need a fun free indoor activity? Well, the Contemporary Arts Museum has you covered with its new exhibition, Out of Stock. This inspiring exhibit features work from Houston teens and was curated and created by CAM's 14th Teen Council. The artwork really makes you think and reflect on big ideas like consumerism and identity. Out of Stock is made by teens, but everyone will enjoy it. The exhibit is running now until October 19th, so head to camh.org to learn more. And don't forget, CAM is always free. I'll see you there. Audi International School is where students from PK3 through 12th grade can experience unparalleled language programs and become fluent in second and third languages, all while developing the skills to be independent thinkers with curiosity, courage, kindness, and community spirit. Audi International School is fully accredited by the French Ministry of Education. Audi is accepting applications for primary school now through October 31st and applications for grades 6 to 12 through November 21st. Learn more at audi.org. That's AWTY.org. Discover the world at Audi International School. CityCast Houston's Private School Guide is live this week. Check it out on our website and in Hey Houston. Today's featured private school is Audi International School. Students from PK3 through 12th grade experience unparalleled language programs and can become fluent in their second or even third language. And they're the only school in Houston that's fully accredited by the French Ministry of Education. Audi is accepting applications for primary school now through October 31st and applications for grades 6 to 12th grade through November 21st. Learn more at audi.org. That's AWTY.org. Discover the world at Audi International School. Today on CityCast Houston, things are tense in Harris County Commissioner's Court with a looming budget deficit that nobody can agree on. Plus, why do we keep building in floodplains? I'm breaking down those stories and more with Cron.com's Faith Bugenhagen and conservative commentator Charles Blain. It's Friday, September 12th. I'm Raheel Ramzanali, and here's what Houston's talking about. Faith, what's up? Welcome back to CityCast Houston. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Raheel?
I'm doing all right. And Charles, welcome back as well. How are you?
Thanks for having me. I'm good. How are you?
I am doing great. You know who's not doing great right now? Judge Hidalgo and her relationship with the commissioners at Commissioner's Court. Let's start with this one. Faith, you've been covering it. Please set all of this up because this is all over right now in the news.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, the commissioners have really just been hammering out the budget. Within the past couple of months, we've seen that be such a topic at commissioners' courts as they try to quote unquote balance the budget or chip away at the deficit that Harris County was facing. And so this week, we had budget back on the docket, and commissioners have really just been at odds with one another. But predominantly, to your point, County Judge Lina Hidalgo has been warring and fighting with three commissioners on court, Leslie Briones, Adrian Garcia, and Tom Ramsey. She famously nicknamed them the GOP 3, despite Adrian Garcia and Leslie Briones being both Democratic. So what we saw this week in particular is, like I said, the budget was back on the docket. They were discussing amendments that would chip away at the deficit, and Judge Hidalgo walked out. And essentially, hours later, she was pictured at a concert, and it garnered a lot of attention online and on social media just because, she was in the middle of very important discussions. These cuts are going to affect the way that the county operates, the way that county serves community members, what departments are being funded in what ways. And she left to hours later be at that concert. And so understandably, people were kind of up in arms about what the timeline looked like, as well as, why she would leave to then later be pictured at a concert.
This is such an interesting just back and forth because she's doing so much damage to her own argument. Leading up to this, she's had these videos that she's been posting, which are like very like pedestrian. Like there was one like at the park, and then there's one at her apartment talking about kind of how important these conversations are. And then there was one she posted
Yeah.
earlier in the week where she was crying, or at least it seemed like she was crying, talking about how these cuts are going to be so detrimental. But then
Mhm.
you leave to go to a concert, and so how do you make the same argument that you're sitting here fighting to make sure that these cuts don't go into effect because they're so important for the folks who need in Harris County, but then you leave in the midst of the conversation to go to a concert. Now, I understand that everything wasn't going to be decided that evening, but at the end of the day, if you're trying to make the case that this is just such a critical conversation to have and that you're the last one kind of standing in the way of all these cuts, showing up at a concert that evening isn't really the best look.
Yeah, and posting about it. Like she posted about it, and it was a Hans Zimmer concert at Toyota Center, the famous composer of movie cinematic scores, who wasn't there, by the way. It was just musicians playing Hans Zimmer music. So it was kind of odd too. That's a side note. But yeah, she's there. She, leaves after frustration just boils over. And she said, I'm going to let you continue with the court. I don't want to be part of this nonsense. And that frustration, by the way, came because commissioners are refusing to fund a study on early childhood education and a juvenile probation program. There's so much at play here. And we don't know if Judge Hidalgo is going to run for re-election, but she kind of hinted at it because at one point she turned to Commissioner Garcia and said, and I'm paraphrasing here, she basically said, if you don't like this, then run against me. So does that
Yeah.
mean she's going to be running? What is this relationship going to be like for the next year and change as well? There are so many questions here.
Yeah. Yeah. I think to your point, there has been a lot of speculation about whether she's going to run or not run. She made those comments herself, as well as we saw a couple reports around when Letitia Plummer announced for Harris County judge that Judge Hidalgo was telling people, and politicians behind closed doors that she wasn't going to run. Whether that's changed or not, that was a couple months ago. But she has, danced around the idea of whether she's going to run or not. And I think we're all just waiting with bated breath. I know members of the media ask her that at nearly every single event, me included.
Mhm.
So I think that's important to know because, to your point, Raheel, Commissioner's Court has gotten so divisive, so dramatic, for lack of a better term. Nancy Sims said that the other day, that it's just really putting a spotlight on county government and this tension, even amongst Democratic leaders themselves.
The problem is with this whole back and forth over whether or not she's going to run again, part of me thinks that at this point she doesn't know either. Because I think when the whole early child care thing kind of blew up, it seemed as though she was really hoping to kind of get this tax increase to keep it going because that would be her legacy. Because if you look at her whole tenure, I don't know what she can necessarily point to as kind of her, premier program or policy that she has to hang her hat on. This would have been it, like her big early child care program, because others, like County Judge Ed Emmett had just the storms and that was always his thing, and Hanker Down, and that's what he's known for. But I don't know what she would be known for other than that. And I think that when that kind of came crashing and burning down, now she's at this this fight for her life to
Yeah.
continue it. And then she even alluded to this kind of ballot proposition at the state of the county that she was going to push for. So I really think that her political future kind of hinges on whether or not she can get this to stay. And it just doesn't seem as though anyone's willing to give her any sort of leeway with this program at all.
Yeah, and that dramatic blow up at Commissioner's Court with the children that were there when Judge Hidalgo was pushing to get that on the ballot, the penny tax. By the way, there's an update on that. There is an attorney who filed a welfare report into Judge Hidalgo bringing children to court. So there's that angle. But y'all, is this rift right now between Judge Hidalgo and the commissioners really about the childcare programs? Or do y'all think there's something else driving this rift between Judge Hidalgo and the commissioners and also her fellow Democrats?
Yeah, I would say I know just, through covering court and talking with my sources in the county, I think it's a lot of the personalities that are floating around, like within the politics. I think that there's been a call for certain commissioners, as well as Judge Hidalgo, to approach things in a way that it would be more of a discussion and less of just like what they want to do at a given time. Again, it goes back to what we're talking about now, where like if Judge Hidalgo doesn't get her way in that vote to fund the study as well as the juvenile program, then she just walks out. And there's also other individuals on court that have, been sharp in their language to her. There's been back and forth. So I don't want to put it just on Judge Hidalgo, but you see this one member of the court just getting up and leaving. And so I think that the friction is with how politics are being handled.
Yeah, I have to agree. And I think it goes back to when she took office. I think there's this kind of fundamental misunderstanding of the role of county judge and the role of commissioners. I mean, county judge is the weakest position on commissioners court. You don't have a large staff the way that the commissioners do.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a vote, but you don't have the direction and kind of this fiefdom the way that the commissioners do. And when Judge Hidalgo came in, this was at the start of the pandemic when emergency orders were in effect. So technically the county judge was the kind of unilateral kind of overseer of everything. As when emergency orders take effect, the county judge is the one who oversees things. And so now that we're back in kind of normal dynamics where the county judge is just yet another vote on commissioners court and doesn't have this quote unquote dictatorial control over things, she doesn't know how to really fit into that role, I think. And I don't think that she necessarily enjoys having to give in to the demands of the commissioners because they're all very strong-willed. And I think it's just a really kind of misplaced power dynamic, if you will. And I can't necessarily blame her because she came in not really having much experience with the county. And then all of a sudden you're the most powerful official in the county, in one of the largest counties in the country. And then now you're kind of being put into this backseat position. And so I see this dynamic there. And so I think it's the personalities, it's this kind of misunderstanding of everyone on how the power dynamics work. And it just doesn't seem as though she really likes this makeup of it as much as she did before.
Yeah.
And I also want to add that there's a really interesting thing going on that's kind of parallel to this at the state level. So in the second special session, State Representative Tom Oliverson and State Representative Schofield both filed bills that would kind of target law enforcement. So we've seen this constant targeting of law enforcement funds from the state level to the local level in recent years. And these two in particular would require a public vote for any redirection of law enforcement funds that were allocated to a law enforcement agency that a commissioner's court now wants to reallocate elsewhere. And then there was another bill that would require for commissioners' courts to kind of remove themselves out of the conversation for the contract deputy program. So this is a conversation that's been happening in Harris County for some time, which is where the constable deputies are able to contract with HOAs to provide additional security and support in those areas. And this is something that would previously have to get routed through commissioners' court, but the state bill filed by State Representative Oliverson would remove their requirement to be involved in that process. And this is allegedly targeting of constables by commissioners. And these bills specifically focus on counties that are 3.3 million population or above, so Harris County. And the idea here is that the Republicans feel that Harris County Commissioners Court has consistently targeted constables. And so this is supposed to protect them and stave off any future attacks. I don't know that this is necessarily the best answer, but it's the answer they came up with.
Gosh, so add more layers to all of this drama happening at Commissioners Court. One last thing, Faith. Is the budget balanced? What's the latest? Because lost in all of this was the reason all of the tension started, the budget.
Yeah, so the latest with the actual budget, which is the most important part of the conversation. And that I want to stress because I think the noise around Commissioners Court can distract people from the meat and the potatoes. And obviously we need to know our financial status as a county. But the latest is that given the amendments that were approved during court this week, the budget is balanced. What I also want to stress when saying that is there's a final vote on September 18th. So much won't change, but, it's not a finalized budget. And I want to stress that because, things could change. And you saw, Commissioner Leslie Briones, as well as several others. I know Tom Ramsey, they went on social media both before that court and after that court to kind of celebrate that, accomplishment from their perspective.
All right. So that vote is going to be coming up later this month, and we'll be keeping our eye on everything happening at Commissioners Court because I don't expect the drama to stop at all. When we get back, we're going to talk about why we're still building in floodplains in a city that floods a lot.
Hey y'all, I want to tell you about the newest exhibition at the Holocaust Museum Houston. It's called Growing Up Jewish: Art and Storytelling, and it starts September 19th. It explores the key people, experiences, and community that shaped artist Jacqueline Cott Wall. The exhibit is a really interesting combination of paintings plus the artist's own narration. So you can see playful images of Jewish holidays, milestones, and so many other experiences, and read the artist's written reflections about being Jewish, from her grandmother's kitchen at Passover to summer camp. The exhibition is included with your general admission ticket to the Holocaust Museum Houston, so plan your visit now at hmh.org/growingupjewish. And don't forget, admission is free for everyone on Thursdays from 2 to 5 p.m. and always free for children and students through age 18 and college students with a valid student ID. You don't want to miss this moving journey through the eyes of a beloved artist. Head to hmh.org/growingupjewish to learn more.
Did you know that September is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, and kidney cancer is one of the most common types of childhood cancer? So, the Kidney Cancer Association is asking for your help to bring awareness and raise funds through a fun favor. Here it is. Get some chalk, go outside, and write messages of hope on a sidewalk. Yep, that's it. You can raise awareness by chalking up your sidewalk. And be sure to tag the Kidney Cancer Association on social media so they can share your messages of hope with others. And if you can, donate at chalkyourwalk.org so we can raise funds for research. Now's the time to get outside and start drawing so we can come together to fight pediatric kidney cancer. Learn more at chalkyourwalk.org. That's chalkyourwalk.org. All right. We are a city that tends to flood, okay? There's no denying it. And the images of Hurricane Harvey, houses flooding, those will always stand out. Yet, after Hurricane Harvey, we continue building in floodplains. Charles, tell me about this new investigation by the Houston Chronicle that you saw.
Yeah, so it's interesting. It looks at the kind of growth in Harris County, but also the other adjacent counties. So Montgomery, Fort Bend, Brazoria County as well, and Galveston County. And it looks at the 65,000 new residential, commercial, and industrial properties that were built within the floodplain in these counties. And I mean, we know we're a fast growing region and you got to build somewhere. But the investigation looks at specifically building within these flood zones and how owners or soon to be owners, people who are purchasing these properties, may or may not be aware that they are in a flood zone, or to the degree at which that they might flood. So you might know you're in a flood zone, but what is at the actual likelihood of you being hit with a flood? Because a lot of the conversation has been, well, if you're in a 100-year floodplain, are you going to get hit if we have something like the tax day flood that we had or something like that? So there's still confusion surrounding the likelihood of flooding. And so we know that we've been building a lot in flood zones. And luckily, these past few years, we have not had any major floods. But like you said, we're a place that floods a lot. And so we're not going to be out of the woods for very long.
Yeah, investigative reporter Yulin Cheng and Caroline Gasolfi found that 1 in every 5 homes are built in floodplains. And this is due to loopholes in Texas's disclosure laws. And there's also like a patchwork of regulations governing home building. And as you mentioned, many buyers don't realize this until their insurance bill climbs, their property value starts sinking, or their biggest investment, their home, goes underwater. This was alarming to say the least, Faith.
Yeah. I feel like this conversation kind of revived during the July 4th floods, a lot of the discussion around the campgrounds. And it's unfortunate to see because people are putting their property at risk, putting their lives at risk, and yet we continue to build and develop when we know that's the case, I expect that there is even more reporting to come from this because, again, I feel like ever since the Hill Country flooding, it's just been revived and a new breath has been brought into this conversation.
And look, affordable housing is important, right? It's something that we have to figure out. That is one of our calling cards in the city is affordability, and part of that is affordable housing. But why do we keep building in floodplains? Like, haven't we learned anything since Hurricane Harvey? Do we just expect it not to happen again? Do we just wish for the best?
Yeah, and I think that's the big question about kind of these publicly funded developments, or the ones that where we're using tax incentives to allow developers like PFCs and other deals where we're kind of giving a 99-year tax abatements. Should we really be incentivizing with public dollars development that are in floodplains? Probably not. Now, it's different when you're talking about a private developer that is using entirely private funding to do something, but still in that moment, you need to worry about the disclosure, and are the purchasers or potential purchasers aware of what the risk is? Now, I will say for those where it's fully a private development, privately funded, there is a certain burden that the purchaser does carry in this, because you're moving into an area that floods. I mean, the region in general, it's a flood prone area. And so you need to be aware, you need to take the extra step to look at the FEMA maps, to look at the first street studies and the neighborhood historic data and things like that, just to have a better awareness of what's going on. And it's a burden that's on the purchaser, but at the end of the day, this is your biggest investment you're making, and you think you would want to take those few extra steps to be on the safe side.
Charles, really great thoughts there. And if you want to read the full investigation, I highly recommend it. It is linked in our show notes. Other things happening here locally, the strike that's happening right now at Hilton Americas Houston has been extended. So the union, United Here Local 23, they are striking with the workers of the hotel in hopes of getting a $23 per hour wage and also better working conditions. Faith, what do you think happens here? Do you think they get this wage? And how is this going to play out across the city as well with the strike and other places?
Yeah, so in terms of the negotiations and what they're asking for, I think what we can take away from there being an extension to the strike is they're probably struggling, in those negotiation conversations. And I know that was part of a lot of the reports that came out when they first launched the strike on Labor Day. So I think we'll just have to keep tuned to what is going on there, and if the strike ends up longer. And I think to your point, this union represents airport workers, other hotels. You mentioned the Marriott Marquis and employees on those staffs. And, that I think, depending on what happens here, it has a cause and effect to those other employees that are across different agencies and businesses across Houston that are prominent.
Yeah.
So I think we'll just have to see how everything plays out and whether or not this will launch into broader conversations about wage and what individuals that are working in these service industries make.
Yeah, and I think it's having a real interesting political and other reverberating effects as well. The mayor immediately announced the postponement of the State of the City address, because that would have been held by Houston First at the Marriott Marquis. And then there's a big conversation about, is the annual Harris County Democratic Party JJR dinner going to be postponed or not, because they are supposed to be holding it at, I think it's the Hilton Americas. And so a lot of the activists are questioning, are we going to cross the picket line just for a big dinner for big fundraisers, or are we going to move it elsewhere? And the fundraiser is supposed to be held the 20th, which I think is the day of the final day of the strike or something like that. So that's a big pending question mark too.
Yeah, that and what's happening next year, the World Cup. And again, Unite Here Local 23, this is the union that is representing the workers at Hilton Americas. They're also representing workers at George R. Brown, Bush Intercontinental Airport, and those contracts are expiring this year as well. So if this new wage isn't settled upon, what happens next summer when the World Cup starts? Like, could there be a strike, or could there be holdouts? I don't know, but that's at play here, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. And I think with so many of the big conferences that are held at George R. Brown, I mean, I don't know what the list looks like for the rest of the year, but they have massive conferences and conventions all year round. And so I think it's going to start to be a bigger question, especially that an economic impact that it could have here locally if this continues and if people start pulling out for it. And so it's also, I think, could have some interesting kind of dynamics when it comes to the Republican primary for county judge. I mean, Houston Professional Firefighters Association President Marty Langton is a union leader, and he's also one of the front runners in the Republican primary for county judge. And so where does he come down on this issue? I haven't heard him say anything yet about it, but there's obviously an often interesting dynamic between public unions and private unions in the Republican Party. So I'd be curious to see how that conversation starts to kind of manifest within the Republican Party if this is something that continues long term.
And speaking of the World Cup, did y'all enter for a chance to get your World Cup tickets? Because FIFA launched the ticket draw for the World Cup this week for Visa card holders, and then they're going to open it up to everyone here in the upcoming days. Did y'all enter by any chance?
I did. I don't think I'll get it, but I did.
No, I did not. I did not. I mean, I want to, but those crowds, I don't know. I'm thinking of like just avoiding the whole mess.
Oh
But
no, you got to go. It's the World Cup. It's here in our city. And here's the thing, FIFA used to open it up for locals, like you were guaranteed a certain amount of seats for people in the city. That's not the case anymore. It's just open for everyone, which kind of sucks, right? I wish Houstonians would get a chance first, or at least a minimum number of guaranteed seats. But no, that's not the case. I entered. I'm crossing my fingers. I really want to attend a World Cup game. Cross that off my bucket list because it's right here. That would be awesome. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I'm not feeling good about it either, Charles.
Fingers crossed. I mean, you don't get this opportunity too often in your hometown, so I'm hoping that a lot of Houstonians get that opportunity, but we'll see what happens.
All right, when we get back, our moments of joy. For me, evenings are a blur. Between dropping off my daughter to her various activities and squeezing in a pickleball session, for me, it's nonstop. And I'll just be honest, with all that running around, I do get hungry, and I'm usually thinking about picking up fast food, and I don't want that. So, you know what I'm doing now? I'm grabbing my Huel Black Edition powder, spelled Huel. Their Black Edition powder is a complete meal that I just shake up and get 40 grams of plant-based protein and 27 essential vitamins and minerals at just $3 per meal. And just when you thought Huel had everything covered, they just dropped a first-of-its-kind Super Greens drink in a can. It's called the Huel Daily Greens Ready to Drink. Forget powders, forget pills. This is your daily greens with a sparkling and refreshing twist, and ready whenever you are. Try Huel with 15% off for new customers today using my code Houston at HUEL.com/Houston. That's Huel.com/Houston. Fuel your best performance with Huel today. Ready to have some fun this summer? Well, downtown Houston is where you need to head because they're jam-packed with cool events every day. You know I love a good workout, and downtown Houston has so many free fitness classes. Plus, they have brand new dance classes at Market Square Park featuring merengue, bachata, and salsa. Just want to relax? How about some live music or their awesome movies under the stars? And you can't forget about their summer trivia nights at Trebley Park. There's something for everyone. So grab the kids, the dog, your date, or just yourself and enjoy your summer in Houston's original neighborhood. Here's one last tip. Blanket Bingo is back this month, but act fast because tickets do sell out. Find the full list of events at downtownhouston.org or text downtown to 56512 for all the fun at your fingertips. Downtown Houston. Get energized and revived. All right, y'all, it's Friday. Y'all know the deal. Let's end on a high note. What is your moment of joy, Charles?
So my moment of joy is this whole pension debacle that we have been seeing play out at Houston City Council with some of the buyouts that took place last spring, if you will, from Mayor Whitmire with retirees. And so they were pending pension payments that they were waiting for, and they're finally seemingly resolved, or at least soon to be. There's about 270 to 280 folks who are still pending. And there's some more information in the Houston Public Media Report. But if they submit their paperwork, allegedly, according to HMEPs, they should be paid out in the next couple of weeks. And so hopefully there will be a resolution to this very soon.
Gotcha. I hope that resolution comes fast. And again, if you want to read that story by Dominic Anthony Walsh, I'm linking it in our show notes. Faith, what was your moment of joy?
I got the opportunity to see Abby Govin. She is a touring comedian. She was in Houston last night, and I just love supporting local art. So,
oh, that's awesome that you got to see Abby Govin, South Asian comedian, and she really became famous on Twitter, which now is, of course, called X. I don't like saying X. Elon's not paying me to say X. I'm going to say Twitter. But that's cool that she was in town and that you had a chance to see her. Okay, I want to end with a shout out to our CityCast Houston neighbors. If you don't know what that is our membership program, and you can support CityCast Houston and help us continue making this show, as well as our awesome daily newsletter, Hey Houston, by becoming a CityCast Houston neighbor for just $10 a month. And when you become a neighbor, I get to shout you out on this show, and you get a chance to shout out a local business or charity, and I will mention them as well. And you will also get a shout out on Hey Houston. So please become a member right now at membership.citycast.fm. And look, if you own a local business for $10 a month, you get that shout out. That's a pretty good ROI right there. So become a neighbor and also help support the show. Membership.citycast.fm. Faith, Charles, thank y'all so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me.
That was Chron.com's trending news reporter, Faith Bugenhagen, along with Charles Blain, the president of the Urban Reform Institute. I've linked all of the stories we talked about in our show notes. Now, I want to shout out everyone who shared an episode of CityCast Houston this week with a friend. If you haven't done that yet, share this episode with 3 friends so you can help us grow the show. If this is your first time listening to CityCast Houston, welcome to the show. Now, hit that subscribe button so you can get episodes in your feed every weekday morning. Also, check out our daily newsletter, Hey Houston, for what to do this weekend at houston.citycast.fm. Thanks. That will do it for this week here on CityCast Houston. Our producer is Carleon Jones. Our newsletter editors this week were Natalia Aldana and Brooke Lewis. Our executive producer is Laura Isensee, and I'm your host, Raheel Ramzanali. Our music is by the band All the Kimonos, with additional music courtesy of Isola James of EpidemicSound.com, plus Harold Shank, DJ DeWeese, and Rob McAllister from Triple Scoop Music via Getty Images. We'll be back on Monday to learn about why Elon Musk wants to dig tunnels under Houston. Thank you for listening and enjoy your weekend.
No, me just completely ad lib how it goes. Talk about improv.